I'm your host, Carrie Arvada, Akashic Records reader, psychic sleuth, and spiritual guide. And this is The Infinite Dance, the Akashic podcast. Here we are in season 2. Thank you so much for your patience in the gap between season 1 and season 2. Even at the low tech that mine is at, I feel like there's still a lot to put together a podcast. And this season, we have a lot more interviews with guests and a little bit more structure in that way. So it was really nice to have that time to develop it and see what comes, right? Because when I give it time and kind of let it brew, lots of things come with that. So this season 2 of The Infinite Dance, more interviews. Most of October will be listener stories of Discarnate Souls, i.e. ghost stories, and a special Samhain meditation too. And if you're not familiar with Samhain, it's spelled Samhain, and it's considered the witch's new year, and that's how those consonants are pronounced in Gaelic. So you'll hear me reference Samhain as we get closer. It is October 31st. It's Halloween in popular culture, but I refer to it as Samhain, and it is my favorite holiday. And so I'm really excited to bring these listener stories to you. I am also teaching my first workshop under the Infinite Academy. So that's what my trainings are going to be called. I have taught before under my umbrella company, Ancient Bodyworks. But this one is going to be a Samhain workshop. It's October 28th. It will be on Discarnate Souls, Miasms, and Stalking Entities. And in the workshop, you can expect to get guidance on figuring out the difference between soul attachments, why a soul is attached to a place, person, or thing, a negative and positive alignments, why it's out of alignment for a soul to be still earthside, non-embodied. That's very important. Affiliation and coping, invocation tips. We'll go through a group DNA activation and guided meditation. The veil's always been considered super thin that time of year, this time of year. So I will have all that information in my show notes and the links to my website so you can sign up. It's a limited space. It will be virtual, and I'm really excited to bring that to you and for you to be able to figure all these things out yourself. I think it's really important, and we're going to have more experiences with souls not in a body. And I think it's really, really important to know how to interact with them and, ask them what they need and etc. So, before I get totally started, a couple things. We are having gale force winds here in Reno, Nevada. So if you hear winds, there's nothing I can do about it, and they just go on for days. So I needed to start recording. My voice is a little scratchy, so I do apologize for that too. I've been drinking all the warm broths and whatnot, but this is just the best I can do with where we're at. So I'm kicking off season 2 with hashtag moving in the time of COVID. These are my stories. These are my stories of moving during this pandemic, and there's going to be 2 parts to this first part. So this is part 1 of 1. And there's going to be part 2 of 1. And then there's going to be part 2. Because I have moved essentially 3 times in the last 9 months. So that's kind of a lot. And, there's been lots of so many different emotions. Fear, what ifs, what's going on, and also so much gratitude. through this time, I have had so much to be grateful for, and then also very clear what to kind of be like, no, thank you to, and set a boundary around. And that's been so entirely clear and nice. So I did blog on my Facebook page a portion of this, and there's some of you that are like, oh, I want to know what happens. So I'm actually going before that moment, and I'm going to add that moment that I blogged about, because it pertains to my car that has so much to do with this journey and why I decided to move in the first place, the pandemic. So without further ado, let's get into hashtag moving in the time of COVID, part 1 of part 1. So let's go to January 2020. I needed to purchase a new vehicle. My beloved, who I didn't have for very long, 1999 Lexus, the transmission died, and I was devastated because even though it was a hand-me-down car, like an old client of mine happened to actually own it for a little bit, and I just called her Marty in reference to Back to the Future. Like, I had to go back to the future, I had to go back in time to get my luxury car, so it was kind of like a joke, but she rode really nice, and I just liked her. It was a comfortable little car, and so I had purchased my neighbor's Plymouth Voyager van, and for really inexpensive, and I was just happy to have something. I do travel with quite a bit of things to and from my offices, so I really needed to have a vehicle. It wasn't something I could just rely on public transportation or walking every day. So anyway, so I knew I needed to get a new car, and I had been looking for a couple of weeks. And if you've ever done that, you kind of, you're all in. You're like, that's all you do with your free time is just looking. And I really wanted something like a Hyundai Santa Fe, like something with high clearance, a smaller, a sport utility vehicle type of, with all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive. So I was really looking for something like that. So I found one, and it was at a Chrysler Plymouth Carnation in Littleton, Colorado. So this is when I was living in Colorado, and so I go out and I go to test drive, and before I even get in to the vehicle, when I go to open the driver's side door, there's a big gash on that little step that you take to get into a vehicle that's got higher clearance. And I was like, oh, there's a gash here. And they're like, oh, we didn't even see it. And I'm like, how in the heck did you not see that? Okay, that should have been like sign number 1 that maybe this isn't the best option for me to be at. And, I was really like unexcited for this process. And it's like, kind of stinks because, you have a car for a long time, right? And that should be kind of exciting. But I was also in a really odd headspace. I was still going through the last dark night of my ego soul. And so I was still really raw with a lot of the emotions that were coming up with that. So there's my mindset anyways going into this. Plus it's winter in Colorado and it's cold and I need a car, right? And so I take it for a test drive, and the door didn't kind of close all the way, and I didn't really know until I started to drive it, and I could hear that whir sound, that whirring sound. And I was like, oh, that's going to be super irritating, right? I'm like, oh, could you guys fix this, because I would really like this vehicle, it's in the budget, etc. And ticked all the boxes. It had this cool, like call it galactic blue or something. I'm like, oh yeah, galactic blue, that's me, So that one was out. They weren't willing to fix it. So I was like, okay, what else do you have? And they're like, well, they didn't really have a lot of what I was looking for in stock. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go look a couple other places, but they were really kind of insistent. And I they were like, well, we do have another Subaru. It's not as high clearance, but it's Subaru, all-wheel drive. In comes Imogene. And Imogene is a black 2009 Subaru Outback Sport. And she looks more like a current Impreza of the Subaru family. So it's got 4 doors and a hatchback. And it's not, like, it's more sleek. Okay, where like the Outbacks and stuff of that we know of now, they're a little bit roomier and bigger on the inside. And this one is just sleeker, and the windows are kind of smaller, and they were tinted, like actually tinted. And so I was like, at first I was like, oh, it's kind of small, you know, and when I sat in it, it was really low, and I was like, that's kind of weird. And I am not the most sporty person when it comes to a car. Like, I mean, I want something like I could go do sporty stuff with, but I don't need like the fast car or, you know, anything like that. That doesn't really come into my radar as something that I need to have the box ticked. So I get in and I was like, yeah, I don't know. But I took her for a spin and she drove really nice. And the young salesman that got assigned to me came with me, and he had to come with me, I guess, all the time. I guess this is a carnation thing. And he kept talking about his girlfriend, who he referred to as the girl. Woof. I was like, oh my God, this kid, where's he getting this crap from? I mean, is this what they're teaching him? Does he actually have a girlfriend? You know, are they just telling him to talk like this? Is this his own slimy way of trying to relate to, you know, a middle-aged woman? I don't know, to sell this car. But I was in need of a vehicle. So he did have that, you know, like I was somebody who needed a car, and I wasn't willing to keep risking the fact that this Voyager was going to take a complete dump too, because it was like just on the verge. Like it was hanging on. It was really hanging on. And so I was really super on the fence, but I thought, let me go take a bite. Let me go get a bite to eat, you know, and I'll come back. And it was kind of hard to get my keys. Like they had my keys to the Voyager. And so I got the keys, and they were kind of reluctant to give them. And I was like, okay, that should have been sign number, 2 or 3 now? You know, I was getting kind of all these signs. But I went and got the food, and I came back, and I was still kind of like, and I was in that weird headspace. You know, we had been talking and driving and stuff for maybe 3 hours. And oh, no, I think this whole process had been more like 4, because I did leave at one point. Oh no, maybe it was during that time. Gosh, I can't remember. It was such a whirlwind. But I went to another dealership and drove another couple cars, and I couldn't stand the way they drove, you know. So I was like, no. So I think maybe around that same time I went and did that. So the whole time now when I came back had been about 4 hours. Okay. And I decided to go ahead with it. I decided to go ahead with this Subaru, you know. I was like, all right, you know, I kind of like the tinted windows. I don't know, there's something kind of nice about having tinted windows. I'm really fair skinned, and I usually put sunblock on my arms when I drive anyways. So it's nice to have that extra protection. And I kind of was getting like, I was kind of in my head going like, huh, I'm in this black kind of sleek car with tinted windows. And my mind instantly goes to the movie Men in Black. And I start getting like, oh, I'm kind of like in this Men in Black, you know, mode of having this sleek, you know, protective vehicle. And so I don't know. That's where I kind of went with that. But plus it was within the budget. And so we were about to start the signing process, and my head was so, like, I was so over the whole thing. And then those overhead lights in the showroom were really getting to me. And luckily there was a breezeway where they kept some Jeep like Cherokees, and they had the tailgates open to a lot of them. And I said, okay, if I need to sit here. I can't be under those lights any longer. They're really getting to me. And so I did. And in all of this business, I had forgotten my ID at one of those other dealerships that I had test drove at. So I went back and got it, and got back in, and they had me sit and wait in this little area. You know, it was another little area with a desk and whatnot. But it wasn't like its own separate room. And so I could hear who was the manager, which I was told was the manager, the floor manager, speaking with another client. And this guy was upset. He had bought a vehicle a couple months ago, or maybe even not even maybe a month ago. And he was really upset. Something was wrong. He had all this paperwork. He was like, listen, I just need you to, return this car. It wasn't what you told me it was. And it was very, it was not a good conversation. Like, the manager wasn't doing a good job giving this guy some assurance that he's going to have a vehicle that works as intended. Okay, sign number 250 at this point, right? Sitting here listening to this disgruntled client and this, really crappy manager, not helping at all. And they come back and they're like, okay, well, we need the title to the Voyager. I left that at home. Crud. That title to my Voyager was at my house, and where I had lived and where I was about half of an hour, 40 minutes away. And so I was like, well, I'm not going back and coming back tonight. I'm exhausted, and this has been a process that I've not been happy with. And so we agreed that we would go through all the paperwork, do all the paperwork that night and all the payment. And I could drive the Subaru home, and the next day, we would get the title back to them. And so I took the Subaru home that night. And so the Voyager was left at the dealership, again, 40 minutes away. And, like I said, I was still going through that dark night of my ego soul, and it was just not great. And when I went home that night to the duplex I was living at, I was just in the worst funk. I just felt cruddy, and I had to do a bunch of clearing, energetic clearing. It was just icky, and I, sign number 529, like I shouldn't have, agreed on this vehicle, right? But I'm thinking, it's here, it's in the budget, it's at my house. And so when I went to sleep that night, I woke up the next morning, and I, thinking they just need to take this car back. Like, I'm going to call them and be like, I don't want it. I don't want this vehicle, and I said, when I was on the phone, I said, well, if you do want this transaction to go through, then you have to bring the Voyager, you have to bring, you have to come here to get the title. I'm not going there. So that's what they did. They, that slimy little young, I can't remember his name, my girl, referring to sales dude, came to my house with the Voyager, picked up the title, and I think one of the seats that came out, you can take out seats in a van to make more room for transporting things. So it happened, and I had the car, and I was like, okay, so let's, make her mine, cleaned it all up and all that, and thought, okay, I have a car, right? I have a car that's going to last me more than a few months, and I've got the cool Men in Black vibes, all right, I can do this, it's a little different than I'm used to, it's a little more sporty, but it's got the all-wheel drive, and I'm good. And it was going okay. I think a month after I had it, though, it did start to make like a burning crayon smell, and I was really concerned about that. And I think I had somebody look at it, and they took care of whatever we thought was going on. I forget what it was. Again, not a car person, but like a friend's buddy who was a mechanic looked at it, or a client, I think. And so I felt like, okay, at least I'm getting, somebody to look at my vehicle that knows. And by the way, next time I get a vehicle, I will have an entourage of people with me, because that was so traumatic. That was just a really traumatic experience. And so I'll let you know why a little bit more. So it started to smell like the crayon. I called them, and they were kind of like, well, basically tough, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but, it shouldn't have this major problem. I just bought it from you, and I asked if there was any major issues. I just don't understand how you can lie to somebody's face and not tell them, because those cars get looked at. They look at the vehicles to see what they're worth. So that was kind of cruddy, but I got that fixed, and then all was neutral, and then COVID hit, right? And we all know everybody has been massively affected by this global pandemic that we're all still experiencing on some level. And I want you to hold space with that. I'm going to ask you to hold space with that, because I know of people that are battling COVID in the hospital right now and are very sick. And maybe you do too. Maybe you've been displaced or financially burdened, etc. by this. So let's hold space for all that have gone through such traumatic experiences with the pandemic. And please, I hope you're kind, and hopefully this will keep bringing us together and not dividing us. If we get in that heart space and help each other out. But now I'm going to get into, so that was my big, experience with imaging. So now I have imaging, my Subaru, and at first, when the pandemic hit, and I was by government mandate told to shut my practice down, and my practice consisted of post-operative care, Akashic Records readings, energy clearings, chakra clearings, guided meditations, and massage. So I was in that category of, you can't see people, in person right now. First I was like, well, yeah, we're all being safe. This is smart. We don't know what's going on. Let's be smart. Then after like 2 weeks of not working, my business, which defines me. I mean, I am my business. That's, this is what I'm meant to do on planet Earth. And so, after a couple weeks with no hope in sight, and the reality setting in that, God, my business is closed and I have no income coming in, and I'm not valid for unemployment insurance, because I was essentially an independent contractor. When you work for yourself, you call you an independent contractor. So there was no unemployment assistance. It was daunting. Mass depression definitely set in, and there I was in my duplex, no income, no identity, with just my cats. Thank goodness for my cats, Jazzy and Daxter Bear, because it was weird, right? I mean, strange. I mean, I was going to the grocery store, and coming home and hosing my groceries down. I mean, it was, I did that. I did. But not knowing what was happening. And, there were some days, with the depression setting in, where I would get up, make a pot of coffee or a press. I do a press and get back in bed, I was just beside myself of, okay, what's next? What do I do here? So it was just a little unknowing, unsure. So when I had a day of clarity of not wanting to get back in bed, after waking up, which I'm sure all of you experienced those too. I think we were collectively just, sleeping or, down. I was like, what do I have? Right? Because I knew I didn't have income. And I didn't know how to make income at that point. By the way, I'd been doing some aspect of my kind of business for 20 years. So that's pretty much what I knew. I mean, I know people, but that's pretty much what I've been doing. And if a lot of you know, I sew, and I consider myself a bit of a seamstress. So I have a ton of fabric, and we need masks. And so I started making masks. And I had no budget, right? Because I had no money. My business was closed, and any little bit of money I did have, I was like hoarding. But I did have a bunch of fabric, and used whatever elastic I had on me, plus a hair ties, and then, which are terrible to sew. The hair ties really, they're hard to sew over. And I would get some at the Dollar Tree, but everybody was doing this, right? In some way, shape, or form, whether we were making masks to sell or making masks there was a Denver mask task force and to give out to people. So I did a little bit of both. And I think I charged people like $4 a mask when I first started making them. And I think then I went up to $8 because I had to get more, supplies. And I, basically needed to do that. And I was frantically making them. There's definitely like that, okay, let's get these out because people need to go to the store. Maybe they still need to work. Maybe they're, in the essential worker. So there was definitely that, but at least I had something I was doing. And it gave me a sense of hope too, and a sense of doing what I love again. And, I want to say thank you. This is the first of my thank yous with my hashtag moving in the time of COVID stories, to all those that purchased masks off me. I think I made about 300, and I'm so grateful to you all. There were so many. You not only gave me a little income, you really gave me purpose during this really tough time. So thank you, thank you, thank you. My other thank you at this time, there is a great, and this is for all my Colorado folks, Denver especially, community table in Arvada, and you have to live within a certain distance of them, but they are a food bank. And what's really unique and cool about them is that you get to shop with a shopping cart, and it looks kind of like a little grocery store, and you shop with points, so you have different points if you're a single person or a family. And they even had organic and gluten-free. And so I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was so cute too. They always wanted to make sure you had a treat of some kind. So there was cakes or donuts, right? Hello, there's that COVID-19 we all gained, but it was really sweet that they're like, oh no, make sure and get these. And they had toiletries and cat food and dog food. And I think you could have as much bread as you wanted. They had a pretty good stock of bread, again, gluten-free. And I was like, oh, okay, this is nice. Like, I felt, again, in such a destitute situation of, I don't know, feeling that I'm being cared for, and, receiving help, and being in that space of receiving help and accepting it. And I think that's really important. But at that same time, so then I started to look into, because of course, eventually pandemic unemployment assistance came out, but that had to be created. Thank goodness for that program. And so I think we didn't start receiving, I didn't, at least until the end of May. So I started receiving the pandemic unemployment assistance at the end of May. So I still needed to pay for my rent. And my landlords were being sort of understanding, but not really. Like, you got to find it somehow. And I said, well, hold on. I've got some numbers I'm calling. And so my second bit of massive thank you goes out to the first one that helped me was the Catholic Charities. And it was so interesting when you had to call in to the Catholic Charities. I think you had to start calling, like, I don't know, on a Monday morning or some weekday morning at like 8 a.m. and you had to get through, and then they gave you a number, and then I believe they called you back at a certain time. I can't remember exactly, but it was something like that. And so, there was kind of this little system, and they were very to the point. Like, what's your rent? Who's your landlords? We're sending it right to them. So it was very business. And, but it was like right on, thank you. So Catholic Charities, helped with that. I know I grew up Catholic, didn't feel Catholic, but I'm so, I'm open. I've always been open to all religions and all ideologies. So it was just interesting that the Catholic Charities was the first one to come through. And then, I can't remember who came second and third, but the Salvation Army helped out with 1 month. And then Brothers Redevelopment. And I believe they might be Denver specific. And it was all phone. And I think I filled out an application online. And then, they did everything, I think they even took care of some bills, and there was some assistance for bills too. There was but I believe they did that anyways. Thank you to those entities. I will put links to all of these in my show notes. And again, if you're not familiar with when I refer to show notes, it is the little box that's underneath the description of my episode. Okay, so the show notes, that's where you can always find stuff I'm referencing to access them. So grateful to them. And then so the end of May, the pandemic unemployment assistance came out, and I was beyond excited to have money coming in. I think there was one other time in my life that I received unemployment assistance, and that time it was like, I don't know, 6 weeks or something. It wasn't a long period of time, and it wasn't a lot of money. It was like, whatever it was it didn't last very long. So this was more like an income kind of thing. But you have to remember, or at least in my head, I'm like, this is not an endless well of income. This is a temporary thing. I will get back to my practice. I will get back to work. I love my work. And so I was like, okay, so grateful for the pandemic unemployment assistance. Had a little bit more money coming in, still being very, very cautious with, I'm still falling in that of, okay, I really don't have an actual income, right? So I'm receiving assistance like through the community table, or I had some neighbors that helped out with paper goods. So Wheat Ridge is the little town I lived in Colorado, still has some amazing neighbors. So thank you to my neighbors for helping out so much during that time. There was one in particular, Morgan Richards, who came and dropped off, I think, cat food and toilet paper and paper towels. And so thank you for that. That's, I mean, so kind. So kind. Um, all right, so here I am with no practice making masks, but I'm thinking, oh, we're not going to have these for very long, and we'll all have a mask burning party, right? We're done with these things. So I was kind of like, let's just get these together. I wasn't making them super fancy. I wasn't making them, I was like, let's just get covered. Let's just get safer. That was my thought. But my lease to my duplex was up at the end of July. So what are we at, May? I don't have my practice. I didn't want to open back up. I wasn't about to touch somebody at that point without knowing more. So I actually did see some clients on my patio. Thank you to my clients who came and saw me on my patio. But it wasn't like, opening up a practice again. I decided to move back to California, and I'm originally from California, Northern California, and I thought, my family is all here. If anything was to happen to any of us, at least we'll all be close. We'll all be close by during this unsure time. And so I made the decision I'd been in Colorado for 15 years, so I was going to start packing up this life of, love, being in love, losing love, falling out of love, owning a restaurant, and, homes, and, going back to school from the beginning because the licensing laws changed in a massage therapy industry, and I didn't get grandfathered in, and, starting my own business, learning to read the Akashic records. I had a plethora, of life stuff there, spending one whole summer at Red Rocks and seeing every show that, caught my fancy. Man, that was a fun summer. That was an amazing summer, and all the things that came in between, all the friends I've met and still to this day consider close friends. But that's a long time, right? That's a lot of life to pack up. And I decided to sell almost all of my belongings. And except for my bed and my office, of course, and personal items, things that are sentimental to me. So between making the masks and selling most of my possessions and packing, I was so busy. I was so busy that last, month and a half, a little over a month and a half in Colorado, because I was trying to, get my favorite hikes in, and, just kind of go to some favorite places. I had my favorite walk, that I did 3 to 5 times a week, depending on the week. And it was 2 miles away from my house. It was in a park that friends and I lovingly call Birdie Park. There's so many birds there, and the Clear Creek ran through it, and it was a green belt all the way into Golden, another town that was about a 10-minute drive away, but you could walk or bike on a biking path, and the part I was in followed the creek, and there were always, like I said, birds and herbs and snakes and deer and, coyote, pick a thing, there. So, getting my last in, that was my solace, my place to go to it was in the city, but I felt like I wasn't in the city anymore. I really got taken away there. It was such a nice little refuge. So, I was really kind of keeping busy. I would still see clients on Zoom for Akashic readings, but again, I wasn't in full practice mode, right? It's just different when you have your, weeks booked out, and that wasn't the case. So as I was getting ready to take this 1,031 mile trek back to where I'm from, I knew I was going to need to take Imogene in for a tune-up, right? She's still a new car to me. I wanted to just make sure she's ready for the drive. And, it's July in Colorado, and I would go through Utah and Nevada, so hello, hot. So I was excited when somebody recommended a Subaru mechanic, and bonus, so I was recommended to this person. It's a Subaru mechanic, and they were 3 miles from my home that I was living at. And then double bonus, it was down the street from said Solace Refuge Park, Birdie Park. So I was like, oh, when I take her in, I can just I'll go take my little morning walk, in Birdie Park. And so I thought, just in case it takes a little bit longer, because I want them to be thorough, tires, all the things, I packed a backpack, which usually I wouldn't do, of, maybe a book and a notebook and water and snacks. And so I dropped Imogene off and headed literally down the street to the another entrance to Birdie Park. There's lots of different ways you could enter this little park. So about an hour into my walk, I get a call from the mechanic, and he says, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "Well, no, I'm on a walk, And he said that she needs a new head gasket, and it's going to be about $3,000. And I thought, what the fuck? I just bought this car in January. It's July, and I just brought it to this other, person. I asked if there was any major things wrong. Again, I was lied to, which, I don't think it's too much to expect people to be honest, and I'm not accepting any excuses for somebody to be dishonest. And I hope this will start to change too, that whole dynamic, like this time we're in, the dynamic of people. Oh, well, salesmen are just slimy, so of course they're going to lie to you. And you're just, well, no, you don't have to be a slimy salesman. You can be, an integrity-filled human being, and sell me a car, because I need a car. I feel like I need a car to do the things I need to do. So I'm cursing the dealership in my head, trying not to curse to this nice Subaru mechanic who's really nice, a really nice guy. The good news is I had the money because of the pandemic unemployment assistance. The bad news is I'm leaving my life in Colorado of 15 years in a week to move to California. And I wanted, as much money as I could because I'm starting anew. So to spend $3,000 was such a tough bag. Well, so the bad news is I'm out that $3,000. The good news is though, he said once you get this new head gasket, you're really adding so much more years to your vehicle. So that felt good. I still was a little upset that my finances were dwindling, and he originally told me it would take longer, and I said, no, I have to be out of my duplex. I'm moving, so I need you to up this, so I think he got it done in like 3 days. But anyways, here I am again with that, double bonus or whatever bonus, that being 3 miles from my house. So I was able to just walk home, because I was like, well, I'm not going to spend any extra money on a Uber or a Lyft after spending the $3,000. So I just walked home, which did make it hard because I obviously had some stuff I needed to get done before leaving in a week that was, I needed a car, like getting my hair done. And I was so bummed I missed out on my appointment with Melissa because she's such an amazing hair artist and friend. But I was just kind of beside myself, and I got home and I threw myself into more packing, and I just needed to be in that space after receiving another kind of blow of an information. So anyways, so there I was, walking home from Birdie Park. I took a weird route home, and I thought it was going to be a little bit of a shorter, and it turned out to be longer. And I met a lady, and had a strange conversation. I don't even remember what it was about, but it's a weird time. I mean, weird time. So I hired movers for the stuff I had, because I had like a bike in the bed. I told you about the mattress and I had gotten a frame, although that came apart and came down. So I hired movers, but I did it, and I didn't realize I was doing this through another company, and I forget what it's called when they give their information out to another company. So it's not like the moving company. It's oh God, it's escaping my head. Anyways, it was like a third party, and they called to said that they were running 3 days behind. And I was like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like, I was so stressed. So stressed. We're still in the middle of the pandemic that just happened. We still don't know. There was no vaccination, no nothing. And I'm moving. My life and my 2 cats. I mean, it was... So I was a bit freaking out again, because I needed to be out of that duplex. My landlords are awful. I mean, they were narcissistic, and I've never experienced landlords to this extent of narcissism. I've had crappy landlords before, but if I said, hey, the heat's not coming on, or it's something, whatever is happening, they would just somehow turn it around and make it like, well, maybe it's something you're doing. And I'm like, what? Like, there's no pilot to light. Oh, it's in the duplex next to mine. Right. So how could I do it? Like, just, cuckoo pants stuff like that a narcissist would do. And like, it was run by a family, and they just so weird that the whole family would act like that. Anyways, they guaranteed me that they would be at my duplex on July 28th. And so that I could, get out and do all of my stuff. So, and it was really weird. Like, they loaded all of my stuff into, like, U-Haul or some kind of truck like that. But then they were going to store it and then load it into a bigger truck. So again, if you go through movers, make sure you're going through just the company and not through a third party, because it made it just strange. But it would be, it took like a week to get to Reno, because that's where I was going. I was going to actually stay with my folks who live in Reno before I moved to Blairsden, California. So a little mountain town in the eastern Sierras. So I had my trip route set, and I was actually excited about this part. I love road trips. I love traveling. I love stuff like that. So I was really excited, and I was going to go Denver to Utah to Nevada. That was my route. I wasn't going to go up through Wyoming, because I had done this trek a lot, and I thought, well, I have the cats. I know where I can stop every 5 to 6 hours, right? I thought that was plenty of time for them to be in the vehicle. And I was going to stop in Green River, Utah. That was the first stop overnight. And then stop in Elko, Nevada, where I had stayed before. And even though I was going to stay at a casino hotel, I don't like to gamble. That's just not my thing. But the hotel itself was comfortable, and it was nearby food places. So I'd get food, like I'd get takeout and bring it back, because nothing was open again, right? You could get stuff to go, but you couldn't eat anywhere. So my D-Day arrives, moving day arrives, and I'm so stressed, you guys. I can't believe the amount of stress I had during this time. And I need to, drive myself, my belongings, and my 2 cats over 2.5 states in 100 and plus degree heat. So I'm thinking, okay, my car does have a really good AC, thank goodness. But I started to load my car with what was left, and I always leave, like, of course, clothes, and my altar is the last thing to go. And my altar used to sit on this cute little brown kneeling stool, like a prayer kneeling stool, and I just had all my stones and my Ganesh and my Tara and candles and pictures of passed on loved ones on this little kneeling stool. And then I had this other little white, it was really cute, almost like a plant stand, but it was wooden. It had these cute little intricate things in it. It was old. Anyways, Imogene and her small cabin, there wasn't a lot of width. I couldn't fit everything in. And, I don't know why I didn't think to get a toolbox, am I saying that correct? Or some other kind of thing. I think they even have, plastic things so that are less expensive. Why I didn't think to get one or strap stuff up there. Because I have bungee cords. Like, my brain was not thinking, So, and my plants. I left my plants. Of course, I'm not going to give my plants to sit in some who knows where, right? Because I love my plants. So, I ended up leaving my altar kneeling stool, that cute little side table, and I think 4 of my great plants that I just loved with my neighbor's girlfriend who happened to just be there that day. And I remember her looking at me at one point, and she's like, "Your eyes are really red." And I'm like, "I am moving in the middle of a pandemic," and like, it was kind of funny that she said that, because this little front door, they were really nice neighbors. They were always really kind to me and helpful, but they were always partying. I don't know how old they were, but I mean, it didn't seem like they were just partying with alcohol. It seemed like there was something else going on, and I don't know what it was. But again, they were nice. They were fairly quiet for partying. And the only reason I know is their cat would sometimes run behind my duplex, and they would go get it. And when they would come to go get the cat, I mean, they would have this little, like, trail of, like, liquor, following them. That's plus I would, see, cans left by the dumpster. But they would have this trail of, like, liquor smell behind them, even from 5-6 feet away. You could smell it. Which, no judgment on that. But it was just funny that she's like, "Your eyes are really red." And I'm like, "I'm so stressed." I'm about to take off and, leave. Like, I knew I needed to leave Colorado. Even if there wasn't a pandemic, I knew I'd always come back to Colorado or to California. And it wasn't like I hated Colorado. I love my time in Colorado. Loved my time in Colorado. And, but it was just stressful. It was just a really stressful time with all the factors that were coming in. So the Monstera, the pear plant, and aloe all stayed, and I had cute little, like, white owl plant holders that they were in. So I hope she still has those, but whatever. So I load us all in, and off we go. I did have to drop my keys off at the landlord's office, which was downtown Denver, and so I was in a suburb outside of downtown. So my trip was getting a little late start. I think I finally got on I-80 West at 4 p.m. So, definitely a late start for a trip. Although, being as hot as it is, maybe not such a bad idea. But, I wasn't on I-80 for more than 20 minutes, and I hear Dexter Bear puke. And this poor child does not like car rides, and I had given him some CBD and some Rescue Remedy. Nothing helps with this poor little boy. And it turns out he peed himself too. So he peed in the carrier, and I'd gotten both of them these cute little soft carriers because I figured it would be more comfortable for them in a car ride. I had them propped. Like, there was, like, I don't know what was there on top of but it was like Princess and the Pea in the back of that car. But, I wanted to make sure they could kind of see out too. Like, I was just trying to make it so it was comfortable. Anyways, I stopped in a little town called Idaho Springs to clean Daxter up. I had brought some of those wipes with me for animals. Thankfully, I'd picked those up. And cleaned them up as best I could. And I think just took out, I think you could take that part off, like the little, kind of, it looked like a carpet, it came right off. And so, poor little dude. So, again, I'm feeling really stressed and feeling like worried about the cats, and I get back on the highway and it begins to hail. And I'm like, are you kidding me? For F's sake, I'm frazzled. I've got this anxiety. I'm worried about the pandemic and traveling in the heat for children and with a future that is absolutely unknown. But I just kind of keep going. Like, what am I going to do? I don't have anywhere to go. It's all signs point forward. There's no going back, no matter hail, cat puking, peeing himself, whatever. So I meander my way through Grand Junction. I was going to try to stop and get something, but it was really late at this point. It was, I want to say like 9:30, I was going to try to just get something that I could bring in the car. Whatever wasn't open in this area, and I didn't want to get too far off. So I was like, whatever, scrap it. I get to the Motel 6 in Green River, and I pull into the valet area. And it took me a couple of trips to get, like their potty boxes and what in them onto the valet rack, that luggage rack that you use. And, this man pulls up and he asks me how much a night to stay was. And I remember just looking at him in my head thinking, oh no, like, don't fucking talk to me. It was like 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night by this time. I'm just got off the first leg of my trip. Which started off, it had some hitches. Cat puke, there was hail, the peeing, not finding any food. And I'm like, really, you creep? Nope. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm worried about my cats. I'm worried about myself. My stranger danger instincts are at an all-time high, right? And plus, I'm in Green River, where there's that serial killer, Gary Ridgway, murdered. I think the first bunch of his victims. Like, no, I am not talking to anybody. Late at night, buzz off creepers, Google it like the rest of us. Sheesh, Bob. No thank you moment. So, this was one of the no thank you moments. I feel like I had thank you universe moments and no thank you. Like, it was like so night and day. Like, here's a thank you. Here's a moment to be thankful for. Here's one to not be thankful for. So I think I kind of slept that night. So whatever, I go in, get checked in, everything's fine. It's actually really easy that I'm on the first floor with the cats, and I got everything cleaned up. I was able to get stuff cleaned up. I think there was even a washer machine I could use in the lobby or one of the little areas. I kind of slept that night, definitely with one eye open, just, I don't know, just feeling out of sorts with everything, kind of feel out of sorts when you're about to move somewhere new. And I tried to get a sort of early start. I mean, the breakfast was cruddy, it was like a banana and that coffee flavored water crud that they have in cheap hotels. But I was really looking forward to this next leg because driving through Utah is absolutely gorgeous. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. It's so, so pretty. The first bit of mountains there's a bunch of that shale looking rock. So it's like these white mountains, that are just stunning against the blue sky. But it was already pretty hot. You know, taking off at whatever time, maybe 9, not the earliest. And note to self, travel either early or really late. Like I think it was definitely a blessing in disguise that I got such a late start that first night. So I'm looking forward to the drive. I'm looking forward to being in Elko that night. Once I get to Elko, I'm only like 4.5, 5 hours from Reno. And I got myself a more comfortable hotel that accepted animals. And I was going to get takeout. So I was kind of like looking forward to just having a little time to myself. And by the way, when you travel with fur children in your car and it's 100 degrees out, you stop at a gas station, you pee, and you pick up a green juice or a snack and get back and start to drive, or, you know, access a drive-through, which I just felt like there wasn't a lot of drive-throughs open at that time. I'm just, you know, with COVID being as it was, weird. But I didn't want to ever leave the cats very long in that heat, right? So, right at the Utah-Nevada border, is a town called West Wendover. And I usually would stop in this little town called West Wendover after to get gas, or before I would have spent the night. Like if I didn't have my cats with me, I would have spent the night there, and because that would have been about 10 hours, and then I would do like another 7 going into Reno. And you know, again, it's at a hotel to a casino, but it's comfortable. They had food, etc. But I was going to stop for gas because right before this is the Great Salt Flats. And if you've never done this drive of Utah into Nevada, it looks like a bit of a mirage of what used to be. And it's actually, these are the biggest salt flats in Utah because there's a bunch of them. But these ones are called and I'm going to probably mess up this name, the Pleistocone Lake Bonneville. And they always have these signs that say, you know, don't fall asleep, keep yourself awake, just because it's like, I think it's maybe a lot of times a lot of people's like last stretch, and it's like 12 miles, and it's just, there's not much to look at, you know. I mean, they're kind of sleepy looking. And I was on the phone with my mom and checking in, you know, where I was and all that. Like I was just kind of checking in, and I just felt like at that time I just needed to check in more. Again, feeling fragile, feeling anxiety ridden and all the things. So I decided to not stop in the West Wendover, the little town right there, to get gas. I decided to go to a town actually it was just an hour longer away, called Wells. And I knew this was coming up, right? And I had never for some reason stopped in Wells. But, oh, ye armpits of all armpits of cities is Wells, Nevada. So, I pull into Wells, Nevada, and you know, I'm like, okay, I'm on the second leg of the trip. I'm in the home stretch. Like after I stop and get gas in Wells, it's about another, you know, hour and a half to Elko. And so I thought, you know, I didn't have enough gas to make it, the hour. So I thought, oh, no problem. And, I made it to one of 3 very crowded gas stations. And as I told you just a couple of moments ago, when you travel with 2 fur children in 100 plus degree heat, I scurried to the bathroom first and then quickly got back to the pump to fill her up. As I pressed the trigger on the nozzle, the gas gushed out all over me. As I stood there frozen with shock, the gas dried on my skin and dress just as quickly as it had gushed out. Again, it was crowded. So all the other travelers getting gas, I think it was a Saturday, were scurrying themselves to help me to get like paper towels, but all of the dispensers were empty. Like none of them had towels in them. What is the chance? So after I went back to the bathroom to wash the gas off of me, I went around to another pump just thinking, maybe there's just something wrong with that pump. I timidly set the nozzle into the tank, but the gas started to come out from this one too. Are you kidding me? What's the chance that the gas would come out of a nozzle? I've never had this happen in my whole life. All I want to do is get to my final pit stop, Elko, Nevada, 90 minutes away. And I can't get gas in my car. To get these poor, hot, and panting cats, which they were at that time, out of the car and into an air-conditioned room where they could rest. And I could treat myself to some takeout, but I do need this gas. So I went across the street to a completely different gas station. And you guessed it, the gas came gushing out of those pumps too. There were these young guys, again, we're all in masks, and I was like, hey, can you come look and see what's going on? And they're like, I could tell they didn't know what to do with cars, and so I'm like, can you see, is there like a hole, and they're like, maybe there's a hole in the gas tank. We just didn't know. And I think I called my friend, who I knew did a lot of traveling, and she really didn't know. So, long story long, I ended up spending the night in Wells, Nevada. There is definitely more to this most crazy adventure, #moving in the time of COVID, part 1 of 1, to be continued. P.S. Don't get stuck in Wells, Nevada. Gas stations on hot days still freak me out. But more to the story in #moving in the time of COVID, part 2 of part 1. Next week. I will link all of the thank yous that I have. Brothers Redevelopment, Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, the community table in Arvada, everybody who's bought masks off me, thank you so much. Thank you to neighbors, Wheat Ridge neighbors. You guys are such awesome folks. If you are somebody who lives in that neighborhood, such a great neighborhood. And I will also link the Infinite Academy, Samhain workshop on Discarnate Souls, Miasms, and Stalking Entities. So the link will be in the show notes for that. You can support me at Venmo or at PayPal. All of your donations help to keep this podcast going. And you can reach out to me on Facebook at The Infinite Dance or Ancient Bodyworks. I have a page and a group. So Ancient Bodyworks, again, is my parent company. If you'd like to book an Akashic reading, chakra clearing, or guided meditation, you can do that at ancientbodyworks.co. I am on Instagram as Ancient Bodyworks and on Twitter as Infinite Dance 8. And also YouTube, the Infinite Dance, the Akashic podcast. You have to put the whole thing in, or else the link doesn't, it brings up a bunch of other stuff. So thank you so much for joining in today. Thank you. If you'd like to share your own stories, I would love to hear them. If you'd like to come on as a guest, or you just would like me to read them, you could send me an email at carrieLynnArvada@gmail.com. I'll link that too. Or if you have a discarnate soul, passed on loved one, or ghost story, I'd love to hear those and feature those in October which is coming up very soon. So most of the spots are taken, but I do have a day that I'm going to read 3 or 4 of your stories. So keep peeling back the layers and keep asking each other and yourselves, may I have this dance?